Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. In this video, I'll recap a 1992 drama film called The Power of One. Spoilers, incoming. Born to an English mother in 1930 South Africa, PK grew up on their farm with a native nanny. However, when the plague destroyed the cattle on their farm, he ended up being sent to a boarding school run by white Africans. The combination of being the only English student at school and away from his mother and nanny for the first time in his life, tiny PK's life takes a turn for the worse here. In addition to being generally disliked by everyone for being English, he is even bullied at school. His main bully is the oldest boy in school, Japie Botha. The bullying had such an effect on PK that he had begun to wet his bed out of the fear and shame he lived through each day. The situation got better only when he went home after losing his mother and confided in his nanny about the incidents. She brought on the help of a native medicine practitioner, Dabala Manzi. To rid PK of his fear, Manzi gives him a brave chicken, hoping that he can draw courage from her. PK lovingly names the chicken Mother Courage, and as his friend, she scares away his bullies when he takes her along to school. However, with the breakout of the Second World War across Europe, PK's bullies get back at him with a vengeance. Swearing loyalty to Germany and standing by their belief to get rid of all the English population in South Africa, Botha and the others at school carry out a mock hearing and sentence PK's chicken to her end. When they attempt to do the same with PK, a teacher's interruption saves his life. While Botha is expelled, PK grieves the loss of his friend. Eventually, he ends up living with his grandfather in Barberton, safe among the fellow English population. Here, he makes a friend in Doc, an elderly German pianist. At the suggestion of PK's grandfather, he begins learning the piano with Doc and works in his garden in return. Additionally, he gains all kinds of knowledge through the wild outdoors of Africa from Doc. However, Doc soon ends up being declared an enemy alien and is imprisoned. Fortunately, the white African prison authorities offer all luxuries to him, including his piano and space for his cactus garden. PK is also allowed to visit as many times as he wishes to. It is during one such visit that he is introduced to Gil Piet, a native prisoner given the responsibility of teaching PK boxing. While training hard with Piet, PK realizes the unfair treatment of the native prisoners. Along with Doc, he begins to subtly distribute contraband tobacco leaves to Piet and the others in an attempt to provide them with a tiny luxury. 5 years go by this way, and PK grows up to be the champion in his weight class at the Interprison Boxing Championship. Additionally, he even takes up letter writing on behalf of the African prisoners and continues to sympathize with all the suffering they undergo. One such incident that deeply disturbs him is when a white African prison sergeant forces Piet to eat the mud from his shoes. Helplessly watching from the sidelines, PK is disappointed and angry that someone he respects so much had to endure such horrible treatment. Stuck in South Africa all through the war, Doc sees a ray of hope in being able to go back to Germany when the news of the potential end of the war comes through. However, PK is not too thrilled about it since it would imply that he would never meet Doc again. To lift his spirit, Piet encourages Doc to agree to put on a concert in the prison. While it was officially in the honor of the commissioner, Piet suggests that they do it to unite the different tribes in the prison. And so, unknown to the prison authorities and assisted by Doc's joyful music, PK writes songs in the language of the tribes with somewhat insulting words aimed at the white Africans. This ensures that the tribes all unite for rehearsals before the show. On the night of the concert, PK is disturbed by Piet's absence even as the show begins, and PK guides the tribes through their flawless performance. Meanwhile, Piet is confronted by a sergeant and is threatened enough to be forced to spill the true meaning of the song being performed. In retaliation, the sergeant brutally beats him repeatedly. When PK realizes this, he rushes towards Piet, who simply expresses his gratitude for uniting the tribes for the first time. In his final moments, Piet reminds PK of his first boxing lesson, where he had told him that the tiny can defeat the big and mighty by being smart. And while PK recognizes his accomplishment, he is thoroughly devastated by Piet's loss. After the war, Doc goes back home to Germany, and PK is left by himself yet again. A young man now, he attends the Prince of Wales School in Johannesburg. His kind headmaster informs him one day after class that he has been accepted to Oxford University along with his friend Maury Gilbert. Glad about his accomplishment, PK PK applies for a government scholarship to be able to attend. Representing his school at the boxing championship one day, he falls for a beautiful white African girl, Maria Moraes. Despite Maury warning PK about liking the daughter of a National Party official, he still finds out details about Maria for him. Having truly taken a liking to her, PK breaks into the residential quarters of her school one night and asks her out. While she doesn't give him an immediate confirmation out of her father's fear, PK realizes that she certainly likes him back. Out with Maury the next morning, PK witnesses the discrimination against the natives brought about by the policies Maria's father stood by. As his manager, Maury urges him ahead to the gym they were visiting and gets him successfully enrolled there with Hoppy, the gym's white African trainer. When asked how the natives trained at the gym despite the discrimination policies in place, Hoppy insists that everyone is equal in the boxing ring, even if they weren't equal in the real world. The next weekend, PK goes over to meet Maria's father to ask him for his permission to date her. While both men stand by their opposing beliefs, PK is denied the permission he wants. Hence, he is surprised when Maria turns up later that evening at his gym and boldly expresses her wish to be together. While leaving the gym later, they are stopped by a couple of natives. One of them introduces himself as the boxer Gideon Dumas and urges PK to have a fight with him in his township of natives, Alexandra. Despite mixed matches and race mixing being illegal, PK agrees to the fight because of Dumas' passion for fighting against unfair discrimination. Meanwhile, not pleased about Maria's rebellious ways, her father requests a police acquaintance, Colonel Brighton, to formally look into PK. On the day of PK's forbidden match with Dumas, Maria accompanies him to Alexandra and witnesses the kindness of the natives when one of the women there, Miriam, lends her a blanket. After an intense match a while later, PK wins against Dumas. Yet again, PK is deemed to be the uniting force amongst the natives by Dumas himself, which is enthusiastically accepted by the gathered crowd as well. When he trains with Dumas the next day, PK sees the unfair state of the people living in Alexandra, including the long queue they have to wait in for the toilet, as they are legally allowed just one toilet for every 200 people. Additionally, Dumas also tells him of the law that lets only about 2% of their population to attend school, and that they are not even taught anything worthy of learning there. For the better future of his people, Dumas suggests that PK should take up teaching English to the natives. Despite hesitating initially, PK eventually agrees that he can bring about the change required to enhance the quality of life of the natives. Along with Maury, PK convinces his headmaster to let them use an empty study room at school for this purpose from the next evening. Even when this certainly goes against the law, their headmaster agrees, because he also believes that unless the natives can learn English, they can never really be included in the prevalent society. When an excited PK meets Maria that afternoon, she is disappointed and angry about this development. After all, she was hoping that PK would take her to the school dance the next evening, and her plans suddenly got dashed in favor of his aspirations of changing the world. At dinner, before leaving for the school dance with a guy of her father's choice, Maria argues with her father, hearing of his plans to join the Prime Minister's cabinet to further his plans of discrimination. She bravely points out that it was unfair. When she reveals that she has been to Alexandra, her father understands PK's influence on her and declares that she is grounded and will henceforth only be allowed to go to school. Angry at her father for preventing her from meeting PK, Maria runs out of the house and into the pouring rain outside. Meanwhile, PK lets his first batch of students into the school. Unknown to him, Colonel Brighton's associate sergeant spots the natives being allowed in. A while later, to PK's joy, his class is suddenly interrupted by Maria's arrival. However, his happiness is short-lived as he and Maury get called to their headmaster's office the next morning to meet Colonel Bright. Even more shocking is the revelation that his associate sergeant turns out to be none other than PK's childhood enemy, Botha. Fearing the police shutting down their school for good, the headmaster sadly orders PK's English classes to be stopped with immediate effect. Once the police leave, he then hands over acceptance letters from Oxford and PK's approved scholarship. Bitter as ever, Botha comes looking for PK later at Hoppy's gym. He blames it all on PK when his life took a bad turn after he was expelled from school. When Dumas defends PK, Botha loses his control and ruthlessly attacks him. While leaving, he not only threatens to close the gym for good, but also threatens to harm Maria. That night, PK sneaks into her room and the two decide to head to England together when he leaves for Oxford in a month. He then gifts his mother's bracelet to her and confesses his feelings. A couple of evenings later, Later, Botha sets the gym on fire. Nonetheless, PK's English class meets secretly in a church that weekend and is joined by Maria again. However, Colonel Brayton and Botha lead a unit to the church to stop the class. In the attack that follows, multiple natives are injured and Maria loses her life. Overcome with grief, PK makes up his mind to attend Oxford. But when he gets to Alexandra to meet Duma, he witnesses the effect of his classes. Including Miriam, he sees a few more of his students teaching English to several native children. Duma further inspires him to continue doing this in various other cities and townships, as against heading off to Oxford, which PK wholeheartedly agrees with. That night, Colonel Brayton and Botha raid Alexandra to arrest PK. While several natives lose their lives when the police begin taking shots, Colonel Brayton also meets his end. Eventually, PK faces off with Botha and finally beats his childhood enemy. Unwilling to accept defeat, Botha aims at PK when Duma gets there just in time and finishes him off. Officially fugitives of the law, PK and Duma follow their plan and head off to other native townships to provide hope for a better tomorrow. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more exciting videos.